Well, merry after Christmas. It's God's comic Brad Stine. This is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, Christianity, and conservatism collide in a cacophony of clarity. We have a very special guest today. His name is, I don't know, what is it, Wyatt?
Really? It's Matthew. Michael Wittig.
Wittig?
Yeah, Wittig.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to start over or just keep
rolling with
Okay.
it. Just,
This is, of course, the end of Christmas. Just a few days ago, it is now December 25, 6, 7, 8, 28, and it is the last Brad Stine Has Issues podcast for 2025. We have a very special guest from the band Pillar, Michael Wittig. He will be our last guest for 2025. I do want to introduce the last time for 2025, my sidekick, my host, my producer, director, whatever. Sidekick. Guess I said that, so I'll say it again. But he is my son, Wyatt Stine. Wyatt, welcome to the final Brad Stine Has Issues 2025 edition.
Awesome. I hope it's the best one.
I do too. And I will say this, it's going to be for sure the last one we have for this year. So that we can count on. Whatever happened before that, it all boils down to this one. And I was thinking about this, you guys. As I come to the end of this, I was looking over some old episodes that we did over this past year. And I was kind of amazed and shocked at some of the people that I had on that were just shocking to me that they were there. I look at some in just absolute, befuddlement that I got these guys to be with me because I was such a fan and was so interested in having them on, and others that I never would have anticipated. And so it's been a lot of fun to see it happening. But, I was thinking about that, Wyatt. When you think about all the different guests that you have and all the different people that you talk to, and it's such a wide variety of types of things we talk about, from music to magicians to actors to apologists to astrophysicists. I mean, it is the gamut of humanity. And so one of the things that I always thought would be an interesting type of show, of course, as a Christian-based show, was the eclectic guest. And that meant they didn't always have to be Christians. Most of them are, though, but not all of them. But I do think it gives us a wider variety. Like if you were to think of somebody, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but if you could think of, let's say, 2 or 3 folks that, if you could just choose anybody that you think, man, let's get this guy or gal to get on the show. Did anybody come to mind that would interest you?
That's a good question. I suppose.
Okay.
Like Shigeru Miyamoto, guy who made Mario. Two of those, yeah.
Wouldn't that be something? Is he still around?
Yeah, he is, yeah.
He's got to be old.
Yeah, but still around.
Nothing wrong with old people. Yeah. What do you have against old people?
Nothing.
That's what I'm saying.
I literally said there was no problem with it.
Well, but
why would you insinuate that there was a problem with old people?
Well, it's not old people. It's old people that only speak Japanese that I think might be more problematic for my viewers.
Well, that leads me to the next person who I would have on.
Okay.
A translator.
Of course. A young interpreter, so he could make him sound hip. But this guy actually invented Mario.
Yeah, came up with the idea of like Mario, Zelda, so many of Nintendo's.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder if he gets royalties for all that, or if he just works for them and they just pay him a salary and that's that. Or is it his company?
No, it's not his company. He just works there a lot.
Do you think he gets any residuals for those things, like a point for...
Maybe. I don't know how the Japanese do business.
Yeah.
All I know is you work 23 hours a day, and that's supposed to...
And then you get drunk. That's what they do. They go drink sake, apparently. It's a rough business being Japanese, I'm telling you right here and now. And I tried being Japanese for about 6 months, and I said, too much for me. I'm out.
Okay, that's a story I've never heard before.
Yeah, it was just an exploration. I was in those explorative years, those teen years where you kind of do everything crazy. Some guys go off and do drugs. Some go off and get, drink a lot.
And you changed nationalities, apparently.
I just thought I would go another nationality, see what happened, see how it felt. And I will tell you this, it lasted about the 2 days of hunger I had from not being able to pick things up with sticks. And it's like, I'm out. If I can't have a fork, I can't be this.
Well, if you think about it, a chopstick is just 1/3 of a fork made of
Exactly.
wood.
Right. No, I ended up taping 3 of them together just so I could stab and eat, but it didn't look as cool.
Make great substitute ice picks, though.
They do. They don't work. They break, they shatter, they're wood.
Yeah, but that's when you also use them as makeshift toothpicks.
Ah, indeed. And of course, way too big to. So everything you're saying just doesn't.
Listen.
Gave me the reason why I abandoned my Japanese
There's a
excursion.
reason they're called makeshift.
Yes, indeed. But if if it was part of the, maybe they should. Maybe there's a Japanese version, Wyatt, of Swiss Army knives where you go like knife, chopsticks.
Well, no. It'd be knife, spoon, chopstick, the other chopstick.
Yeah, and then you're like, click, click, click. Well, anyways, that was something that I actually never thought of. Anybody else that you, and again, if the sky's the limit, who else would you want on? We can get anybody we want.
Are we talking living or dead or just...
Well, living, like it legit.
Yeah. So like not a hypothetical
Yeah.
as, yeah. Oh, gosh.
How about Donald Trump? How about the president? He'd be,
I mean, yeah.
that'd be crazy.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
yeah. And, but nobody like that comes to mind for you specifically that would be a personal touch, like this is who I would like to have.
Honestly, there's not a whole lot of people that interest me that are currently alive right now.
Okay. Yes, I know. So I'm thinking you're referencing Neil.
He was definitely one of my picks.
Yeah, you've loved to have him on.
He'd be so good.
Yeah, I think that I've tried to think of my different folks that we've had on, and I also have said this: if I had a top 10 list, bucket list of folks that I really, really would want, I would say this: I don't think I could come up with 10 off the top of my head. Some stick out. Some are for sure I wanted, and honestly, Wyatt, fascinatingly enough, in this last year, at least 2 I did get from my top 10 bucket list. And again, everybody I have, I love, and some people I don't know, and I meet them, and I go, oh, they're interesting, and I'm glad I had them. Others I know of, but there was a handful that I really did want, and one of them is going to be in this clip because, folks, I thought since it was our kind of swan song for 2025, I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we just kind of take a little memory lane and go revisit a couple clips from a couple folks that we had on this year, and then Wyatt and I can talk about it. So that's kind of what we're going to do. And I just picked like 5. There's, 50 to choose from, I guess, if 52 weeks in a year. I picked 5, and, we might have to do this down the road even next year, not wait for New Year's because there's so many wonderful people. But I just picked a handful that I thought were interesting, that I enjoyed. And so the first person that I picked was somebody that was on not that long ago. His name is Chad Jackson, and he's a historian who did an entire project, I think it's called the MLK, Martin Luther King Project. But he's a black historian, but he found some very interesting things about Martin Luther King that most people didn't know and most people wouldn't be comfortable with, and that was mainly that he has a lot of communist influence. He was a communist. He had a lot of people that wrote for him in his speeches, including his most iconic, that wrote it for him, and that they were communists. And so it was like, who expects that? Nobody saw that coming. He was a very articulate guy, very charismatic guy, Martin Luther King. And he certainly used some Christian elements that we all, who are believers, gravitated to. But it was a little disturbing. And I think FBI came up with some files not long ago that kind of showed some things that he was involved with that were very nefarious and not godlike in any way, shape, or form. So, I'm not looking for, mudslinging. I'm not looking for trying to disparage people. But truth is the single most important thing one can have. It is the truth. Because as a Christ follower, Jesus said he is the truth. You have to land there. Truth is more important because it allows you to know what is real, and that way you can draw conclusions. And you should know if somebody is off base, the Bible gives us permission to call them on it. Say, look, you're not in line with God's will, because you're trying to bring them back to faith. So it isn't wrong to bring up reality, especially if it's been hidden. So this particular guy did this entire, and I think it's on YouTube. You can go get it. You can watch the full movie. It's fascinating. But we just took a clip from it, and I got to say this. The reason I brought this guy up first, Wyatt, was because this particular clip got a lot of traction because of what I was talking about. And what I was talking about was free speech. Now, because the clips on Instagram are so quickly edited to be like a minute long, you might lose a little context every now and again. You might lose a word or a framework or a preface that you didn't really understand if you didn't see the full episode. But I was talking about how free speech only works. It's only good. It's only important. It's only powerful. It's only the only way that makes it necessary is if you have speech you don't want to hear. Speech you hate must be protected because that's the only kind of speech that's under threat. Whoever you're forbidden to criticize are the people that want to control you. And they do that by saying you can't say this word, you can't talk about this topic, you can't go about this subject, you can't reference us in any way that's disparaging. That is losing free speech. And again, nobody's trying to censor free speech if you agree with it. They only want speech they don't like or makes them look bad or exposes something about themselves. So this is Chad Jackson, and I made a reference about how difficult free speech can be and how delicate it can be and how in some ways it'll sound a little shocking what I'm about to say, and those of you who watch the show, maybe you remember this. But then we're going to talk about it as soon as we get back. So Wyatt, show this quick clip of me and Chad Jackson from a few weeks ago about free speech. It only is free speech if you allow speech you hate. That's the only time it matters. We need to persuade those who disagree, if it's possible. That's why I said I believe in free speech. And I agree with you, too. This is odd, and it sounds odd, but if you have the power to look at things objectively and logically and not fear the smears, then it's this. I want a restaurant where I say, I don't want to serve black people. I want the option to do that because the market's going to weed me out. Yes. Nobody's going to go. But the better news is I'm still free. Right. I'm just not going to make any money doing this thing. But at least I know who my bigots are.
I know that my food won't be spat in.
Yeah, I want to know who the bigots are because... Right. Well, I guess you can see why that was a little controversial. You know, it was taken out of context. But what I did say, I mean, not really, but kind of, is it said that, you know, I want the option to have a restaurant where it said, I don't serve black people. Now, I'm talking to a black guy, right? And so people are like, shocking, what? Do you want to go back to the, Jim Crow laws? But what I was saying was, and so I thought, well, let's use this as an opportunity to explore what I really was getting at is, I want a freedom that is so free that I can even be a bigot if I want to be. If I say I've come up with a brand new restaurant and no women can come, I want the freedom, if it's a private restaurant, to say that. You can't come in if you're black, can't come in if you're Jewish, can't come in if you're Chinese. Don't matter. Now, why do I want something? Because I'm a bigot? No. It's because I wouldn't want these people? No. Would I actually have a restaurant like that? No. What I'm saying was, I want the freedom of speech that is so sacrosanct that a person can basically just eliminate certain folks and say, the government can't tell me who I can have. And then I said, and you saw him agree with me, the market will weed me out. If I come up with a blatant no Jews allowed to this restaurant or no blacks allowed, there's probably going to be protests. There's probably going to be articles written about, can you believe this bigoted restaurant? Don't go here. Don't support that. People are going to make sure everybody knows that this guy is not a good man. But my point is, so what? I still want the freedom to have the option to do it, because that means speech does exist freely in my country. Like I said, Doesn't mean you're going to like it. It can be horrific speech. It can be terrible. It can make you sick to your stomach. It can make you despise it. It can make you see the worst of things. But like he said, hey, you know, I know who's going to be spitting in my food. If I know who my bigots are, wouldn't you rather know if somebody's a bigot than them pat you on the back and say, I love you, go get them, and then behind your back they're trying to destroy you because they hate you because of the color of your skin or whatever? So I just felt like, you know, the danger of free speech, but the importance of free speech is that it comes with a price, and some people are going to be affected, some people are going to be insulted, some people are going to hate it, and that is the most free and important society you can have, because now you know exactly what you're getting, exactly who people are, but most importantly, nobody gets to dictate your free agency and autonomy. Why? Do you remember that clip by any chance? You put it together, right?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Now, did it seem a little weird to you when I said that? Like, oh, what is he? Oh, he sounds like he wants to white-only thing. Or
No.
did you understand what I was getting at?
It's very obvious if you actually pay attention to it, what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So you think that freedom is more important than people's feelings?
Freedom is more important than pretty much anything.
Yeah, it's true. And, you know, and as a Christian, freedom means you have the right to disbelieve in God. You have the right to believe in God. You have the right to blaspheme God. And who gives us those rights? God. You know, the Founding Fathers says that our rights come from God. So even the rights that we have in the Declaration, when we sort of got rid of Britain, we said, you know, God gave us these rights. They're inalienable. They can't be taken. They can't be removed. They can't be overrun with some judicial activism or outvoted. These are immutable traits. These are sacred rights. They come from God Almighty, and they can never be touched. And to live a world like that, live in a country like that, live in a place like that is a truly powerful, beautiful opportunity for you to understand how sacred freedom actually is. And it is funny that we as believers understand that, you know, that means we have to have people in here who hate Christianity and want to destroy it. But the Christian Foundation that says that, you know, we have to have the freedom to choose or not choose based on our own point of view is more important than making people feel comfortable. So that was Chad Jackson. I also had an interesting quick conversation with Dinesh D'Souza. Now, Dinesh called me the most dangerous Christian comedian in the country. And I was in a film of his a couple of years ago, right before the Trump election, called Vindicating Trump. I was an actor, actually played the head of the DNC. So I played, you know, like the antagonist guy. But I was in his movie. And then they came out with another movie, The Dragon's Prophecy, which talked about Israel and what's going on in Israel, because that's such a hot topic right now. Wyatt, when you think of Israel, what do you think of? What first comes to your mind?
Honestly, the reading glasses that you have.
Oh, yes.
For some reason, that's always the first mental image I get.
Okay.
That and that one thing you talked about. I think you talked about it, but like a long time ago, about some device they made that makes drinking water out of the humidity. Yeah, those are the two things that come to mind.
Yeah,
somehow.
maybe that. I don't remember saying that, though. That does sound like something they'd come up with. I mean, these guys have taken raw sewage, and Craig found a way to make it clean so you can drink it. I mean, from raw sewage right through their plants. They had to. They have no options. I mean, they have to learn how to use ocean water. They don't have anything else, right? They have to learn how to use recycled water. It's very precious there. And the genius of the Jews is unprecedented. I mean, they've got like 100 and something Nobel Prize winners. Again, Israel's the size of New Jersey. So what is it about the Jews that makes them so unique and the most historically persecuted people group in continuum in history that I'm aware of? I don't know of any group of people that have so long been shown to be persecuted, enslaved, hated, killed, destroyed, continue to exist, are still here, and still face persecution. And Dinesh, a Christian man, but I was asking him about that. What is it why are Jews for whatever reason, always the scapegoat, no pun intended, for hatred and anti-Semitism. So anyways, we brought Dinesh on, and here's what he said.
Whatever God values, the devil goes, listen, I'll go ruin that, and then I'll get the last laugh on God. So what does the devil have against Adam and Eve? Why does the devil go into the Garden of Eden? Simple answer is that's God's creation. God cares a lot about man and woman. The devil is like, if I can corrupt them and ruin them, it's my revenge. It's a delicious revenge on God. I think it's exactly the same reason why the devil goes after the Jews. If God has a chosen people, if the Jews are the chosen people, it's like, listen, why don't we fling them off their ancestral land from the river to the sea? Why don't we take their holiest site, the site of the Solomonic temple?
So I think that was a pretty insightful idea, that whatever God values, the enemy wants to destroy. You know, he definitely, I think the devil hates humans more than anything because we were made in the image of God. We were given special status. We were given procreative powers that we can make more people. We were given his spirit. He breathed life into our nostrils. We became a living soul. We were also flesh. It's a unique, one-of-a-kind existence that God Almighty made and wanted us to participate. And so for us to be able to not only be made by God, loved by God, his ultimate creation of all the universe and everything in it, the last thing he made was us. We were the completion, and he wanted us to represent him and to love him and be in relationship with him. And then we messed up, and his love, I'm sure the enemy who went in to destroy this Adam and Eve's trust in God. This is one thing I'm learning about my own life, guys. Trusting God is the ultimate foundation for your faith. Do you trust God no matter what? And I'm telling you right now in my life, there's some things happening that are making it a challenge for me to trust God. I'm just being very transparent with you because I want you to know that humans are on the journey and Christians are on the journey, and we fail at the journey and we stumble at the journey and we make mistakes and we get angry and sometimes we shake a fist at God. Why would you do this? Where have you gone? Why have you neglected me? Why have you forsaken me? Even Christ himself at one point said, oh, why have you forsaken me? It is part of the testing. It really is, guys. I don't care how far along you are in your faith. I don't care how far along you are. It's always like this sort of crucible of God putting anything into your path that forces you to make a decision. Will this be the deal breaker? Will this difficulty, will this challenge, will this loss, will this confusion, will this be the one that makes you turn tail and say, I abandon you, Lord, I give up, I recant, I no longer want you in my life? That's what he's offering. Or do you say, I double down, I don't get it, I don't understand it, I wouldn't have chosen this, but you're my Lord, you're my Savior, you're my healer, you are my provider. You know, I was thinking about Job, and Job did not ask for his family to be wiped out in one day. He didn't ask for everything he owned to be wiped out in one day. He didn't ask for everything he possessed to be wiped out. He didn't ask for boils, but he got them. He got them. He didn't ask for them. And it was terrible. And it was traumatic, and it was dark, and it was evil. And Job pondered it, and he said, I wish I was dead, and I wish I wasn't here, and I don't want to go through this. And his friends come to console him, and they basically blame him. And his wife says, why don't you give up? What kind of God would treat you like this? You keep severing him and being righteous towards him, and look what he did. Curse him and die. He doesn't deserve your loyalty. That's what she's telling him. And you know, my wife said that it was the first time she ever thought to herself, maybe I understand in a way what she was doing. It wasn't like she was just some jerk that hates God, curse God and die. She said, could it be that she saw her husband suffering and simply said, I can't stand it. I'm angry at God to allow this to happen to you. So it's like a supportive wife who didn't mean to make it worse on him, but in fact was in her own despair. And I thought, well, that's an interesting way to see it. And perhaps that is true. Who knows? But the truth of the matter is, when it got Everything was taken that we think we're supposed to have, our families, our food, our shelter. Everything was taken, and all that it distilled down to was just him. He said, God, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I still will serve you. And that is what God was looking for. Not only for him, I think God knew, but so that Job would know. This is ultimately what I believe, and I'm not going to depart from you. It's not going to be easy. But yeah, you're my Lord and Savior, and I'm going to stick with you, and just let me be honorable. And in the end, of course, God blessed him and healed him and brought all the incredible things to him. And that's not always the case. Some people just die. We had as we tape this, I think a senator or former senator just got diagnosed with cancer. So, he's going to die. And he said, I'm Christian. I'm standing for it. I'm sure he's asking for prayer and for healing. May not happen. So this is the hard part of God. I'm telling you, it's easy to make it easy. It's easy to make everything work the way you want it to pray what we want it to end. And that's part of the problem. We pray and we want a certain result that we've depicted that makes it make sense. And God might say, I have something more important to you, and that's our relationship. And so I need to do something else for us to move forward. So this is a fascinating look at not only humans and how Satan hates us because we've given such special status, but hates the Jews because the Messiah, Christ, who came and defeated the enemy so that we can have him for eternity, whereas the enemy is going to hell. He wanted the Jews destroyed because they are the lineage of the Messiah. Well, folks, another guy that I brought on was the beginning of something I wanted to do. I might do it more maybe next year. I pray that God will give me the opportunity. I called it the Atheist Experiment, and it was me drawing a conclusion about what atheism really means. The whole concept was that it's incoherent. If you live a life that is truly believes in atheism, you won't be able to live a life unhypocritically. What I mean is, atheism's core is we're here by accident. We just are. Nobody made us. Nobody had us in mind. So there is no sort of big story that we are here to unfold and participate in. We're just kind of here until we vanish into oblivion. That's what you have to believe as an atheist, and they'll agree with that. But my premise was, but you have podcasts, you have write books, you love people, you do all these things that you act like they have meaning. But again, once you die, you never know you were here, so it's as though you never were. You understand that if you're an atheist. Once you disappear, you were never here because you no longer have access to memories. So you never actually existed. You were here and then you vanished. It's pretty much a hellish idea. But what I said to him was, I don't think you can live that life because you prove, and just even having coming on my show, that you think there's ideas worth pursuing, even though it's all going to vanish away. Anyways, here's a quick clip from the Atheist Experiment. I just want to really get down to brass tacks because I do believe, and I'm going to start with this question. I believe that the single most important question in human history is, does God exist? Here's why I believe that. Because I think, and I'll let you answer, there's only two answers, yes or no, and so I think it's the single most important question because however you answer that question will affect every other answer you'll give for every other question you will ever have. And I'm talking about the most important questions in life. What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What are we up to? Do you agree with that premise that the most important question in human history to really find the answers to what we're all searching for is, does God exist? So if you want to hear his answer, you can go back into the archives. Where do people find like old episodes of Brad Stine Has Issues? And by being old, I meant vintage.
You can always go to our YouTube page, Brad Stine Has Issues.
And subscribe by any chance?
Of course.
Yeah. And comment so that we get lots of views.
And like the video. Don't forget to like the video.
And hit the notification button.
And the bell, all of that stuff. Yep.
Right. Listen, so I said to you earlier when we started that if I had 10 people that I wanted as my bucket list to be on my show to interview, there are two right now that I haven't had that I can think of that I would like. Number one right now would be Ricky Gervais. I think he's a brilliant comedian. He's funny, he's articulate, he's smart, and he's an atheist. So I think for us to have something in common, like a couple comics, to have something in common is that we're both actors. Obviously, he's much more famous and rich and talented than me, but I'm just saying we have that commonality. And that we both have a whole different perspective of God, I think would be just an amazing interview. The other one would be another atheist, Alex O'Connor. I like him because he takes God seriously. All the really intelligent, philosophically minded atheists take the God question very seriously because it's very important. And that's kind of what I said to this guy. It's the only question that matters because it's the only thing that gives life meaning. And so I'd love to have Alex on. I'd love to have Ricky. Those are two that I don't know if it will ever happen, but I would. Who would be the other, six? I'm not sure yet, but two of them I did have on. One was Stephen Meyer from Discovery Institute, and you need to follow Stephen. He is a brilliant man. And I use his ideas about intelligence encoded into the makeup of humans to give me more assurance that God is out there and that he has to be there. And then how does he reveal himself? And of course, you go to Christ. He's the only one that is a candidate for that. So it helps my faith. I'm an intellectual guy. I like to have intellectual ideas. But I will say this. If I had to choose, and I loved Stephen, I loved everybody I've had, everybody. But if there was one guy that I just really wanted to have on, it was William Lane Craig. I just have watched him so long. He's so brilliant. He's a double doctorate. He's a top Christian philosopher. And he has debated the best, toughest, strongest, most amazing atheists on earth, as well as people that just don't believe in God, and he's just a phenomenon. I hope you're watching William Lane Craig, listening to him, learning from him. He's one of the books I recommend, On Guard to Be a Disciple, is a good, interesting, simple primer to give you Christian worldview and teach you. And sure enough, I was able to get William Lane Craig on the show, and I would see the clips afterwards and see me and this guy talking. I've seen so many of him talking to other people, and it was still surreal to me. I cannot believe I'm talking to William Lane Craig. That's how much I just admired this guy. And I talked to this brilliant philosopher about that question of meaning that I asked in the atheist experiment, and I concluded it doesn't make any sense to live a life like that and because it feels inconsistent. Let's see what William Lane Craig thinks about my premise. Not that I invented it. And let's see if he concurs. Let's see if a guy that I couldn't hold a candle to philosophically thinks about my thoughts. Wyatt, hit it, William Lane Craig. Because we have an end game we're all trying to get to, and yet, if I'm not mistaken, and nobody will know it like you, there is no end game to true materialism. It's a big, giant roll of the dice accident, and we just got too big for our britches and became self-aware. So am I overstating the case, or do you see these guys, as smart as they are, really missing the forest for the trees when it comes to how they function?
I do think there's a huge disconnect between what atheists believe and how they live. And I've called this the absurdity of life without God. It seems to me that if atheism is true, if there is no God, then ultimately there is no meaning, value, or purpose to life. And yet it is impossible, Brad, to live consistently and happily within such a worldview.
Well, what do you think about that? There he is, William Lane Craig, actually agreeing with me. And again, I probably got some of that information from him anyways, or at least through the compilation of all the people I've read about Christian worldview and atheism. But it was just exciting to know that, I wasn't foolishly representing our faith, that I had something, I was onto something, and it was consistent philosophically with what is true about life. And then we had a politician. This was a funny one to have on because I grew up, I'm an older guy, remembering when the Speaker of the House was Newt Gingrich. I think he was with Reagan, but I don't remember who it was, or maybe it was Bush, I don't remember. But anyways, Newt Gingrich, everybody knows him, the Newt. And I got him on. I met him at a party here in Tennessee, asked him if he'd come on, and he actually told me he was interested in being on because they thought I'd ask interesting questions because I was a comedian, so I thought that was cool. Talk to him about Anthony Fauci. You guys know how I went on and on and on. This entire podcast exists because of the coronavirus and me just getting on and ranting about how crazy it was. This is 5 years ago. And how I felt this guy really, really was, it was just immoral what happened. And many people, of course, now agree with that. Nothing will happen to him. We've already discussed that. There will be no punishment for people who have done these evil things because everybody's in on it, obviously. But nevertheless, and I'm talking about Republicans are in on it, otherwise they'd be prosecuted. But nevertheless, I got to talk to a guy who's inside baseball. He knows all these folks for real and actually was in the game because he was the Speaker of the House. What do you think about Anthony Fauci? And here's what Newt Gingrich had to say on Brad Stine Has Issues.
I mean, there are lots of things. I mean, I knew Fauci in the 80s when he seemed like a really good researcher who was working on mostly on AIDS, HIV, and I really thought he was very impressive. The stuff we've learned in the last year and a half or 2 years, these people, they're a collection of senior scientists who methodically, and they knew they were doing it, lied to the American people.
The American people. Did former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich actually say that on my show? He did. So, I mean, that's a pretty big deal when you say somebody lied to the American people and you are on record. So there you have it. And, you know, folks, I was thinking about one person, and there's so many I could have chosen, but I just want to throw this one in because this was so kind of funny and surreal. I had Susan Olsen on, who was Cindy Brady in the Brady Bunch. Why did you, by any chance, and again, this is way before your time, but were you familiar with the Brady Bunch when we had Susan Olsen?
No. I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
So you don't have one idea what the episodes are like or anything.
Not one iota.
Well, what I loved about it was we had Cherie Curry on, and they're good friends, and so she helped me get Susan on. But Cherie Curry, who is with the Runaways, is, you know, this rock and roll girl band from the 70s, but is a very conservative woman. And who would have expected that? Well, suddenly we get a hold of Susan Olsen, find out she's a very conservative person too. Not a Christ follower, though I would love for her to be, but conservative and not afraid to stand. Who would have thought the littlest Brady in curls would be the one that's an advocate for conservative values and so forth? But what I found really interesting was, you know, I'm sure she's sick to death of talking about the Brady Bunch since it's aired. The last airing was probably 74. So here's a woman that's had to talk about this 84, 94, 14, 50 years. But she was a kid. But nevertheless, I did. And the one thing, though, that I found interesting was, you know, is the Brady Bunch kind of just sticky, you know, candy? But she had some interesting insights about how it was used to help people, kids at that time, in a way psychologically that I wouldn't have suspected. So that was an interesting, there's lots about it. Go back in the archives and watch it. But this was an interesting take, and, you know, it's a little lighter and a little more upbeat after the other one. So why go ahead and show Susan Olsen, or as we know her affectionately, us boomers, Cindy Brady. Now,
knowing that psychiatrists use the show for their most troubled patients, because you would think, just like you would think I'd have it made after being on a hit TV show, or I'd be the coolest kid in school. No, you would think that kids that are coming from abusive households would hate the Brady Bunch. They would resent us to pieces. Not the case. Showing them the show gave them hope. So like every latchkey kid, too, every kid that wasn't abused, but they were just kind of lonely, would come home, turn on the Brady Bunch and see the family that they wish they had. But it was a happy thing.
Well, I think that was sweet. That you know, and I do remember the Brady Bunch. I came from divorce. It was devastating to me. And I do remember that watching that show, it felt safe. Yeah, look, you can even get two families together. And I think in the Brady Bunch, both of their spouses had died. I don't think it was divorce. And they blended the families, and it worked like a charm. Now, that very rarely happens. Let's just be honest. Blended families, blended kids that suddenly become brother and sister with a new mom, new dad, right? doesn't usually go well. It can, and I certainly am grateful for those times that it has. But anyways, there was this, it was Pollyanna. Yeah, it was maybe not realistic, but it felt good. You can get along, you can love each other, you can start over, that families can stay intact and love each other. And it was so wonderful just to have that escape, even if it was just for 30 minutes on a Friday night or whenever it came on back in those days. Because most of us, especially growing up in the 70s, came from divorce. And so we were devastated by things that had happened to us. And here was a way to kind of reclaim, in a fantasy world, what we wish our life and our family had remained intact all along. Folks, as we head into 2026, I hope to have some interesting guests on, but I do need to say something right now that's important, and that is this. If you believe in what we're doing, please like and subscribe, but also go donate on my bradstine.com. There, you can go to donate, and it goes to this, my ministry, which helps fund this. Folks, there is some challenges that I'm facing physically, and I'm watching and waiting for God to do his mighty work, and we will talk about it as if and when it makes sense. But I do want your prayers, and I do want you to just lift me up. I do believe in the body. I do believe in us praying. I do believe in us being one. I do believe in us rallying together, and there's so many of us all over the earth. And so for me to know that you guys are thinking about me, praying about me, and lifting me up is very helpful. And I'm really just curious what 2026 will lead. I believe it's going to be a beautiful thing. I think it's going to be inspiring. My hope and prayer has always been that I end strong, that I am honorable to God, and that I do credit to his name, and to honor him with my thoughts and my minds and my actions, behaviors. So please just go ahead and donate if you're interested, but at least pray. And please comment on this, please share it. And let's see if 2026 can be a miraculous, great, explosive growth for Brad Stine Has Issues. God only knows where we are going and where we will be. But this I know. I'm so grateful for the years he's given me to do this, and that I pray they will continue. But whatever happens, wherever we go, whatever happens in life that we don't anticipate, if you are Christ's follower, if that's what you actually are, and when you are put into trials, you start seeing how precarious that can be, and how you really need to reinforce and anchor your faith. But that's beautiful, because it gets you closer to the God that I have served since I was 9 years old. And now I really want to be resting in that, trusting him and giving him the authority he deserves in my life and on this earth, as long as he gives me breath to do just that. Thank you for your 2025 commitment to Brad Stine Has Issues, and can't wait to see you in 2026. Meanwhile, we have a guest, and it's an interesting guest. If you like kind of hard rock, why would you call it hard rock, progressive rock, or would you call it a symphony with a banjo? What would you call it?
Probably hard rock and or prog rock.
Okay.
Kind of depends on the era.
And what's the name of the band?
Pillow.
And are you a fan of?
Yeah.
How long have you liked them?
As long as I've known them.
All right. Well, I'm glad. So if you go ahead.
Probably 15-ish
15.
years.
Okay. So,
yeah.
and are they still around?
I believe so, yeah.
I see. So,
yeah.
Well, if you know the band Pillar, if you like hard rock, if you like progressive rock, if you like to talk about music, if you like Christian music that's unique and different, then you will like this next gentleman, because he is part of that incredible, unique, long-standing Christian band, Pillar. He's going to talk about his ministry, his life, his faith, and what it means to be in the public eye in a very specific genre of the Christian performing arts. So let's finish 2025 with this interesting interview. I'm sure you'll like it, with Michael Wittig of Pillar. How do you do, my brother?
Hey, doing very good, Brad. Thanks for having me on your show. And I am not the singer. I'm the bass player. I'm going to correct you, like you said.
All right, I thought so. For some reason, I think...
I do sing on stage, but they don't even give me a mic.
So do
They
you?
don't give me a mic, but you'll see me singing up there all the time.
So you don't even do the harmonies or anything. You're just do you sing?
I sing the whole time. They just don't give me a mic, man.
Holy smokes!
It's too good. You know, they don't want me to overshadow everybody. You know, they gotta kind of tame it down a little bit. So they just keep it away from me.
I understand. Well, anyways, I didn't mean to give you a credit that it was not appropriate. But anyways, either way, you're doing a hard part of the band. You're locking down the tempo with bass and drums are the kind of the key to keeping things to not going anarchy. But listen, you're part of, or were part of, and is rekindled part of a band that was quite well known, quite successful. You guys had a couple Dove Awards. You had, I think, 9 albums, 3 EPs. You had what, 24 singles back in you started in 98. So you kind of got in there 98. So let me think about that. Was that the tail end of, and I'm not an expert on music history, would that be considered the end of or still part of the grunge movement, or would that have moved on a little bit to the
I think it started to move on to new metal around that time is when like Papa Roach and Linkin Park and POD and those type of bands were starting to hit big nationally. And I think they called that new metal back then.
Okay. And is that what you would, if you were to reference like, well, what is Pillar? You'd say we're new metal?
Yeah, and we were like a lot of musicians, we've evolved through the years, through the decades. But when we very first started our first album, yeah, there was some rap core mixed in, which was, you know, what Papa Roach and Linkin Park were doing at the time. And, you know, we were influenced by some of those bands, and you could hear it in our early album. But as we started releasing albums and kind of coming into our own writing, we kind of got out of that and kind of found our own sound.
Yeah, and is that intentional, or do you all kind of just it organically starts transcending into a new flavor, new feel? Will a band member say, "Hey, man, I'm really influenced by jazz fusion. How about we throw a little of that in?" And the other guy goes, "Hey, you know," and then you say, well, "What about this vibe?" And next thing you know, it just starts taking on a life of its own, and suddenly you have your own thumbprint. I mean, is it that magical, or is it intentional? You say, you know, we're kind of being lost in the shuffle. We need our own flavor that doesn't seem to be standing out from the crowd. You know, how much is accidental, so to speak, organic, and how much is a marketing decision?
I think it depends on the band. I think everything you said is true in some regard to some bands. For us, it really wasn't that way. We had, you know, each of our members four at the beginning when we first started, and you know, we had our own music tastes that we listened to, and we bring that into the band. But what really started to alter our sound from our first album, which was the Above album, to the Fireproof album, and to then our biggest album, Where Do We Go From Here? The sound definitely evolved over those 3, and it was more due to member changes. Oh. We had a guitar player switch out early on. Our Travis Jenkins, the original guitar player, stepped out, and we brought Noah Henson from North Carolina in, who we had met on the road. And he just had a completely different taste in music than our other guitar player, who was great. They're both great, but Noah had more of a metal background. Okay. You know, he was listening to more groove metal, which was not what our old guitar player was listening to. So it brought in that edge and kind of just gave her a sharper edge from Fireproof on, and it's noticeable. And then even with the drums, we had a drum player around the same time. We brought in Lester. Now, this is the core band we're talking about that people know us by. Me, Rob, our singer, Lester, and Noah. And once we got us 4 together and we brought Lester in, it just took our sound to a whole nother level, a place we really couldn't go before because their influences were so unique, and they're just such amazing musicians. It just brought us to another place where it wasn't possible for us to go before.
Well, you know, I noticed, like, you saw my son when he set up this interview, and I told you before off camera that he is a drummer and really loves music and very eclectic. He loves everything. But his favorite band is Rush, and so I found it interesting. I guess prog rock or whatever they'd call that, but. They, of course, had this tragedy of losing their drummer, and not just losing their drummer, but they lost Neil Peart. So that's a rough one to replace. Well, you can't. There's certain
No, he's
iconic
one of the better rock drummers of all time.
all time,
Definitely.
and obviously any instrument can be replaced. There's plenty of talented folks, but there are certain players that have such a taste and uniqueness to them that brings such a specific tone, vibe, feel, whatever we want to use, to the band. They can't be replaced. They're one of a kind. And so I noticed they're trying to go back on tour, and they found this female drummer. I forgot her name because I didn't know I was going to be talking about Rush. But anyways, they found this one. But one thing I do remember that I found interesting was they said, she's going to play, because they got classic songs. People expect to hear the song the way it's supposed to sound. But they also said they kind of give her the leeway to bring her own, I guess, uniqueness to it, her own personality to it. And that's interesting to me because does it feel like blasphemy? Like, no, you got to do Neil the way Neil did it because
It's going to upset some people. I'll guarantee you. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be really upset. Then some that don't care because they're just excited to hear the songs again. But this is going to upset some people for sure. Just like when Linkin Park brought in the girl singer, there were some people very supportive and excited about it. Then there was a lot of fans that were just appalled and just tore it up before they even gave her a chance. So it just depends on the person, man. It's going to definitely divide some people.
Well, and they gave her that latitude and they kind of liked it. It was just something different for them. I think musicians like to play off of something fresh. And I think that, I guess, I don't want to say I think, because I don't know. I'm not a musician. You are. But there must be a beauty and an inspiration when you're playing live that, especially, and I think this more specifically in jazz, where it's very freeform. They kind of let it happen in real time. I'm guessing they have a foundation of where they think they're going. They got to have some rules. But they let it vibe, man. If suddenly the guitar player's killing it, they just kind of let it go for a while. I don't know that you can do that with classic songs that people expect to hear.
You can't now, because nowadays most bands are playing to tracks.
Oh.
It's not like where we have wedges on stage anymore. Nobody really does that. You have in-ears, and then so you can hear and stay on track with each other. The drummer normally has a click track.
Yeah.
Because you might have extra sound effects, strings, or things that you can't physically have there on stage, so they're on tracks. You're playing all the bass, the drums, the singing, the background singing, all that's being performed live, but you got a click track that you have to stick to, so you can't just, now if something bad happen, though, and that click track goes off, which happens, you're good enough where you just finish the song. You don't need it, but it helps keep structure. Or you might have synced video to a song or a light show synced to a song. For all that to happen, it has to be on that click.
Yeah.
And then you have a good enough band and a good enough team that if something goes wrong, you could still rock that song just like the old days. That's how we do it.
Yeah.
So it's not so much with rock where you can do that. Where we do change stuff up, it's planned. We'll have rehearsal, and have a classic song and maybe come up with a new breakdown or extend a solo or add a new ending just to give it some spice, but that's all pre-planned and practice, and then you perform it live that way. At least that's how we do it with our style of rock.
Well, that makes sense. But it's kind of an interesting double-edged sword, I think. If you've never been in the performance arts, and most people haven't, most people certainly haven't made a living at it. There's. If you think about, there's tons of professional musicians. Well, maybe there are, but compared to how many exist, how many the world population is, it's not a lot of people that can perform professionally as musicians.
Not many that get paid to support a family doing it. There's a lot of musicians out there, but when you're talking professional supporting a family, it's very, very few, especially as a group, ever make it. You're talking like 1% or less, probably. It's very, very low.
It is rare. And so, the thing that's interesting about us, if I may be so bold as to include us in the same family, I'm a stand-up comic, so it's a completely different thing. But comedy works because of rhythm as well. There's beats and measures and timing that makes comedy work. Nobody understands it. that aren't comics. In other words, if you ever watch a comic and you like him and you think is really funny or she's really funny, and you hear them say a particular routine, you go, that's so funny, that's so good, oh, I've thought of that, or whatever. It feels so simple. They just said the words and it was funny. And you think, yeah, this is easy. Being a comic, I said, they don't know is that I had an idea that I thought this would be funny, but it took me 75 tries on stage to realize, oh, I got to pause 1 second more before I say that punchline. Oh, I used the wrong word. They didn't understand. I got to change this one tweak. The nuance and the intricacy of stand-up comedy is way beyond what most people would ever occur to them, because when you do it, it feels really simple. It just sounds like you just said a sentence, but they don't understand how much time it is involved. So I'm thinking about you guys as musicians. Maybe this is the same for you, so I'm going to ask you. When I finish an album, it takes at minimum a year to get an hour. That's how hard it is to write stand-up comedy. That's if you're doing a couple of hundred shows a year. George Carlin said he wanted to get 2 minutes a week to try to have an hour's worth so he could have an HBO special. But you get tired of your material. You get sick of it, especially the old stuff. But the people buy tickets to hear the stuff they heard on the album the way it sounded that they've been singing to for 10 years. We would rather jazz it up. What if we added this thing or added, like you said, let me do more solo. I just want to mix it up. I'm sick of playing this song the exact same way. So how do you feel as an artist and as a musician? Do you just sort of acquiesce to, this is what they want, it's okay, I'm grateful that they love our song, we're going to give it to them? Or do you sometimes feel like, look, it's our song, we're gonna add some elements to this just to keep us intrigued by it? How do you approach that?
You know, we do add little things to some of our old hits. You know, we have our bigger hits that are expected to be played at every show: Fireproof, Bring Me Down, Frontline. Those three have to be played or people would probably be upset and riot. You know, and we play them pretty much the way the album is, but there's some little things that we do add for us for fun. And there's some things you can pull off live that are different than recorded records. Some of the stuff we add live may not work for a recorded record. It just works better live. And so when we add stuff, we try to make sure that it actually elevates the experience live for people. I don't think we're ever just selfishly like, hey, forget them, we're going to do it this way just because we want to. You know, we understand that we got to where we are because of the support of the people. They are driving and flying from all over to come see us. You know, they're excited. They're investing their money and their time with their family. So for us, when we go to perform, it's not about us. We are there to serve, to make it a great experience for people. And so when we add those elements live, it's because we think it elevates the experience for them that evening, you know, when we see them.
So let me ask you this. Let's start to kind of walk through your career, your journey, maybe individually, but as your band, because that's kind of what you're representing right now. I know that you guys have a documentary coming out, so that's going to be great for fans, but maybe even equally great for those who don't know much about your band to get a vibe for, wow, I love these guys. I'm not the greatest aficionado of classic music like some people are, so I'm not able to access, you're doing this thing or that thing, or you're similar. Yeah. I'm not as good at that as some folks in my life, but enough general understanding that, like, even just listening to some of your stuff, and I hope this, I was just thinking about this before I said it, that I hate it when people compare me to somebody, but I can't help it.
Don't hurt my feelings, Brad. Be careful here.
Well, it reminded me, when I first heard something, it reminded me of POD. Now, maybe it's because I heard them first, and so that was a very specific, which I like, by the way. It's a cool sound, but it's very aggressive.
Yep.
It's very, man, it's not something you're going to sit and meditate on.
No, and they're great. We like POD. We've toured with them. Great guys. Definitely an early influence of ours. Okay. And we would be definitely in that genre. Yeah, our music is aggressive. There's, like I said, it's definitely hard rock with elements of metal, lots of melody. Our singer can actually sing. He's not screaming the whole time, but he can scream too. We kind of mix it all up together.
Yeah. So, anyways, I like I said, I didn't want to seem like I was trying to diminish your guys' your talent and your unique sound. It's just the first thing that came to my mind is, oh, I've heard this kind of sound. But here's the thing, Mike. They over the years, I have heard people say about me, he's like George Carlin. And by far, it's been the most comparative stand-up to me. And then they bring in Robin Williams and this and that. Well, here's the thing. On one hand, it feels a bit insulting. Like, what are you trying to say, that I don't have my own thing? I mean, yeah. Was I influenced by George Carlin? Yeah. Because he was maybe the best stand-up there ever was, intelligent-wise. He was an atheist. He was anti-God. Everything I'm not, he was. But I'm an artist. And I can appreciate people who are great at their craft, even if they don't see the worldview that I see. So if you were to say, you remind me of George Carlin, I got to say, that's a compliment, because to me, he was great at what he did. But I feel like sometimes they say that as though they're saying, well, you're stealing his act. They say, no, I'm influenced by him. So tell me, oftentimes music goes through trends and seasons. So like you said, you guys ended up right on the other end of grunge, and suddenly there's PODs and other guys. You just said that there was influence, but it has a similar vibe. It's no different than opera sounds like opera, country sounds like, I mean, it is.
Yeah.
It's a genre. It is what it is. So how do you, as an artist, differentiate and appreciate compliments like, oh, you're similar because you like them, but also not feel like they're trying to typecast you or even say you're derivative? But in fact, no, but let me tell you what we do, what we've brought to the table that we think distinguishes us from the others of the same genre.
Man, we just honestly don't really think about it. I mean, because there's so many people out there and there's so many opinions, you're not going to make everybody happy. So for us, it's just been about playing what we enjoy, playing what we're inspired to play. We are a faith-based band. Our purpose has always been to tell people about Jesus, to be a positive influence, to just give people hope, through our music. And that's always been our purpose. So between that, just doing what we enjoy musically, we don't really worry about the comparisons. I would say early on, for sure, we were influenced by 311. We were influenced by Beastie Boys because our singer Rob liked the Beastie Boys. You could hear that early POD even. You can hear that early stuff in our very first record. And then, as I said, as Noah came in, who has these Pantera influences, Sepultura, all these old school metal bands, they call them groove metal. That's what he was into. And then you hear that in our music combined with what we did before. And as we all matured as musicians, it just kind of started going to its own place. But yeah, you're always going to get compared to somebody. So, we're all influenced by somebody. The cool thing about a band, though, it's never just one input. You got 4 or 5 members, and they're all have their own influences, and then you merge it all together and make something unique.
Yes. So were you always interested in music when you were younger, or is it something that suddenly just kind of you found yourself in the game of music, or was it from a youth, or did you jump in later in life or teens?
Me personally, I was a teenager in early high school. Maybe it was grade school, but early high school, a movie called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure came out. And I watched that movie and I was like, man, I want to play guitar. So Bill and Ted got me influenced to play guitar. My youth pastor at my church taught me how to play. I played on the worship team. And then soon after that, the bass player for the high school I went to in Riverside, California, he was the bass player. And the guy's amazing. He was amazing in high school. He's doing stuff in high school that I still can't do. The guy's ridiculous. He's still a professional bass player in the West Coast. But he was leaving, and he said, Mike, they're going to need a new bass player. And he convinced me to switch over to bass, and he taught me how to play bass. And I've played bass ever since. I played in the jazz band at high school once he left, and started playing in bands I put together. So I've been playing since I was probably 15, music, and knew early on I wanted to be in a Christian band. You know, in addition to bass player, I do the role a lot of bass players have. I was the one booking shows, promoting the band, doing all the business type stuff. That's always been me, even in high school. So I was putting together bands, organizing band practices, booking the shows at churches and coffee houses and whoever would have us, and kind of did that journey, you know, gained that experience. And then when I met the guys and we started Pillar in Kansas, you know, they had their sound and they needed a bass player, and I started in, and then I had this business and booking and promotion background that I brought to the band, and then it all just worked together. You know, once us main guys got together, things kind of took off pretty quick.
It seems to me that you're the bass player, that bass is the unsung hero. I think I said that in the intro. Bass is an interesting instrument to me because they're usually not the front man. I mean, you got Rush, which is unique, but mainly they're usually not the lead singer. If anything, they're harmonies, but they're laying down the rhythm so that everybody else can play and jump and look like, you know, superstars. And you guys just kind of humbly lay back and just lock everybody down so they don't start going sideways. But
now, our fans know that's not true of me, though. I do think a little different. So that is my main role, is to lock in with the drummer and lay the foundation of rhythm. A reason I don't have a mic is when we play live, I'm wireless. We're all wireless, but I'm all over the place. I like to move. I like to both sides. I'm never really still too much.
Good.
But I also, because I started on guitar, I hear a lot of melodies when I write. You know, so it's not in every song. Most songs I just do what needs to be done. But there's some songs of ours that were wrote based off a bass line because it was more melodic. It was more of a main instrument versus hiding in the background.
Yeah.
You know, so for people that haven't listened to us, if they listen to the song Simply, if they listen to the song Awake, if they listen to the old song Echelon, they'll hear that the bass line is actually kind of is where the song was built around. And we did that. Now, we don't do that all the time, but every once in a while I'll have a bass line that we'll build songs around because it's just such a unique part. Yeah. So bass players generally are back in the shadows. You know, I like to kind of bring bass a little to the highlight every now and then.
Well, no, and you're an entertainer. You're there to give people a show. So, I mean, that's great that you add that energy and do show that bass isn't some caricature or something, that it can be whatever it wants. You know, it's interesting because, again, I'm not a professional musician, but bass is one other thing I think it's really interesting is your average person is a fan of music, but they don't play music. So they don't stop and analyze, how did this song get structured? What measures they don't think like that. They just hear they like it or they don't. But what they don't understand, and I only started understanding because my son was involved at a young age in music, so I got to watch how that game worked out. Bass, you almost don't hear it unless it's not there. And then you go, something's wrong. And you don't understand how important the bass is until it's not there. Then you go, oh my gosh, that is the power of this song, is that bass. And, you know, the first person that I had ever heard, and again, maybe it's my ignorance, I'm not a pro like you, but the first person that I'd ever heard that I was impressed by, I think I might have watched a documentary about him, who really elevated, from what I understand, bass into a more of a melodic source of driving a song, was a guy named Jaco Pastorius.
Oh yeah, he's legend and for bass players. And now he was like a bit before my time. You know, he was legend before I ever picked up a bass. So for me, the early influences were probably guys that were influenced by him. Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who does phenomenal things on the bass, and you can hear it. It's not hiding anywhere. It's the main leads. Yeah. You know, the bass player for Rage Against the Machine. That album came out when I was in college, early college, late high school. And that bass player, you know, did some things that bass players were not doing. And that's the stuff me personally that I gravitated to, where the bass players really shined and were showing something unique that's typically not done.
Okay. Well, the other thing that he did uniquely I think. And I'm just kind of using your expertise for those who listen and are fans of your work and your band's work. But, you know, you're a musician, so let's understand music in a way that others wouldn't. I think one of the other things I heard he did interestingly was it was fretless, that it was basically he took the frets off his bass. So it's like, I don't know if that's harder maybe for a bass player. It's like, well, it's no big deal. You know where the A is and the, you know, whatever. But I guess I thought I had heard that was rather revolutionary anyways for a electric bass, not for stand-up bass. Obviously, it's fretless.
Yeah, so stand-up basses are fretless, but they've had fretless basses, you know. I mean, it's just a different sound. Yeah, they are harder to play because you don't have your frets on there that just look. But if you play, I mean, the thing is on the top, though, the dots are still there on the top. Here it's fretless, so you could still, the way you're looking down, because I'm not playing like this anyways. You play live like this, and there's dots and markers on the top. Okay. So even the fretless basses will have those on the top. So if you've been playing a while, it's not that it's harder to play, it's just a different sound.
I got you.
Because you don't have those frets there. You can slide up and it's smooth, and the transitions, it's just a different sound, you know. So like, I don't use fretlesses for our material because it's not really the sound I'm going for. But there might be cases though where, you know, just for a little part, you may need that smoothness that they bring.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Well, okay. So I guess before we jump into some more of the spiritual realm that you guys also bring to the table, I do like the technical stuff, just because a lot of people who love music don't get to ask guys like you questions like that. And I think that one of the things that people really do like is they like to know where music came from. They like to know where a song came from. They're interested because sometimes it's really fascinating stories. Sometimes they're weird. They're out of the blue. The most famous I can think of contemporary is the most covered pop song in history, "Yesterday" by Paul McCartney. He said he came to him in a dream. So that's pretty odd. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard some musician who wrote a song that's like a monster, like it was, it's a classic. You say, yeah, it took me 10 minutes. Yeah, he wrote that in 10 minutes. And it became an iconic song. Another guy said, yeah, it took me like a year to write that. And it's a good song, but it doesn't necessarily fit that category. So talk to me. You said you crafted the bass line that drove some of your songs that people get to know. So tell us about a couple of those songs, how you came up with the bass. Were you just fiddling around and here it came out and like, there's a groove? Or did you have something in mind and the song evolved from that? And tell us what the song is.
So there's a few of our songs that have really cool stories, not just for the bass, but just how they were wrote in general. So one of them that you're referring to is called Simply. We were on a tour, a multi-band tour. This would have been back in 2002, 2001, a long time ago. And we were in Pennsylvania and got snowed in. There was a terrible blizzard. And I think they had like a law, like you couldn't go out on the roads. You needed to stay home because it was that bad. So we were just stuck in our hotel for several days. And while we were on tour, me and our guitar player, Noah, were always mindful that we needed to write for the next record. So pretty much every day we set aside time to write, the most of the time. And I would just get him, hey, dude, let's go write. That was kind of my job, was to corral people, and we'd sit down and write. And sometimes we'd write something great, sometimes nothing special, but we put the time in, you know, and we'd do that over full tours for months and months. And that's how our albums would get wrote. Well, we were stuck in this hotel, blizzard in. Yeah, and I was just noodling around. And sometimes I think that music is inspired, you know, being a faith-based band, you know, I feel like some of our key stuff was directly inspired by God because there was no thought into it. There wasn't conscious thought, where I'd just be noodling, and one of the coolest bass lines I've ever came up with in my life just came out fully formed. You know, it took me maybe a second or two, but it was like minutes. It was there, where our guitar player, who's an absolute genius guitar player, he's one of the best I've ever, he's just a genius. He really is. Where he heard it and goes, whoa. And he starts writing his part, and it just comes together in a matter of seconds. You know, and we've had that happen on a lot of our songs. We're just jamming on a sound check, and our biggest song would be wrote, Frontline, the biggest thing just came out of nowhere. But now Simply, though, so we wrote this song out. It's in 6/8, so it's not in a 4/4 time signature. It's in the 6/8 time signature. It's a little bit more, it's complex. that bass line moves. There's a lot of instrumentation going on. And we would record our stuff and then give it to our singer. Hey, here's a song. And that's how we typically wrote most things, not everything, but normally it was music first, pretty laid out. We'd give it to him. He'd write killer stuff over it. Well, we gave him Simply, and it just sat for a long time. He knew it was good. He just didn't know what to do with it. He had no clue what to do with it. We were in the studio.
He's writing the lyrics, you're saying.
Yeah, he writes the lyrics and the melody. So we were in the studio. We recorded it. He still didn't know what to do with it. And he's hanging out with another band that we're friends with called Disciple. They've been around longer than we have, and we just rocked with them a couple times this last year already still. They're still going strong. And their singer's named Kevin, and they're out in Knoxville, and we're in the Knoxville area recording our album. And Rob's hanging out with Kevin, this other singer, and he's like, man, I just don't know what to do with this song. He goes, listen to it. Kevin listened to it, said, dude, Rob, this is a hit. He goes, if you don't want it, I'll take it. No, Rob goes, no, I'm going to do it. And Kevin's advice to Rob was, Rob, just keep it simple. Keep it simple. And Rob had that word in his head, and it turned into the song Simply, about the key line of the chorus that says, you simply love. And it's just about God's love and all that. And it just came out from his friend saying, just keep it simple. So it's really cool how music does. Every song has its own story. And sometimes it's a basic story, but sometimes it's pretty cool, all the elements that come together for a hit song to come about.
Yeah, I was wondering too, because like I said, and the only reference point I have is stand-up comedy. It's not the same, but you're writing something, and you're writing something that has lyrics, right, words, and you're writing something that has a rhythm to it, and you're writing something that has an emotional appeal. There's something about this that people are going to connect to. So it's similar but different, obviously, than music. And I think music is more important, honestly, in some ways, because it lasts forever. I've made the joke before, you write a beautiful song, it ends up in your wedding, honey, they're playing our song. Nobody ever says they're playing my joke. We don't have that. We don't join that group of folks that have an emotional attachment to a song. It's one of the few art forms where certain songs you go, I know exactly where I was the first time I heard that song. It's just something about it goes deep into your soul. And I was curious about that because you mentioned the idea that, you're a Christ focused band. So clearly you believe that there is a muse that gives you this information, gives you this direction, gives you this artistic acumen. It's God. And honestly, Michael, I think he gives it to everybody. It's just they don't always acknowledge it's from him. They think they thought of it. Yeah. But by the same token, most musicians, if you hear them talk about songs, they all say the same thing. I don't know where that came from. It's almost like you're on a radio dial going, and suddenly a song shows up and you go, I don't know, but there it is. It makes sense now.
Yeah.
And so it sounds to me like that's kind of what you're doing. But I'm wondering about the power of music. It does seem to have a connection to your soul that's different than other forms of art. And I'm not saying that we don't have emotional, psychological, or even spiritual connections to a film, maybe to comedy, maybe to a magic show that seems mysterious, maybe to a live play. Yeah, they touch your emotions, or you wouldn't be interested in it, but not like music. So it almost makes me wonder if music is unique in that it is from the spiritual realm. There's something else there. Now we know as believers that apparently Lucifer was a musician who ended up being Satan. So, but that just shows the power of music. But I am curious. So kind of going back to the worlds that you and I grew up in as Christians, we were always told, this song, now I'm older than you. I remember them saying, don't play this song because it's got backward masking in it.
I remember hearing stuff like that, but I was real little.
Yeah. And it's like,
I'm older than I look, Brad.
Okay. But nevertheless, we were warned as Christians, evangelicals, about certain music being detrimental, demonic, satanic. And I used to always think, well, I think this was mainly in the 70s. I think, I think it's kind of their gimmick, right? Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath, or it's kind of a gimmick, oh yeah, we're Satan worship, but they're just doing that to seem on the edge and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man. Now that I've gone further down the road, there is some power out there and some nefarious forces that are trying to deliver messages, and music certainly can do that. So I'm curious your perspective of, do you think there is some dangerous music, stuff that maybe should be avoided, that there's something deeper here than just a melody and some lyrics?
Yeah, I think music is very, very powerful. Probably one of the most powerful things in our human existence, because it does move the soul. You read in the Bible and they talk about hearing the angels singing in heaven. And I mean, I think music's, existed before we did, in God's realm, before there was humans and before he ever had the idea to create us, there was already music going on. So it must be that powerful. Like you said, it just, you think about the right song, it brings you back to specific memories, unlike anything else. And what I think about music, by what you're saying, is there right music or wrong music? I think, yeah, there's probably some musicians that purposely use music to deceive and cause harm or spread a bad message. Then there's a lot that, like you said, that's a gimmick. But the thing is, I feel that, this is me personally, that if you're not for Christ, you may not be against them and like saying, hey, I don't like God, but if you're not like for him and living for him, I think that your intentions can be used by outside forces, maybe without you even knowing. So I think that some music is deliberately written because that person has that maybe darkness in their soul and they want to spread it out. Then I think there's people that are more lighthearted, just having fun, trying to make money, just out there doing what they do. But because they're not for Christ, they could still be used by the enemy in putting out messages. I mean, a lot of the pop music out there that kids listen to nowadays, I mean, they're talking about explicit sex, explicit drug use, explicit, that kind of lifestyle that kids don't know. Maybe they think that sounds fun. They see these people on TikTok and, it's not MTV anymore. It's on TikTok and social media and their videos and having fun and stuff. But I mean, all that kind of lifestyle all really just leads to destruction at the end of the day, and those messages are what's out there all over the place. So yeah, music is powerful and it can be very destructive when carelessly used, which it is a lot.
So
Definitely.
and I'm only asking you this just to get the specific expertise of a musician and a believer. So you're going to have an insight and a wisdom and a sensitivity to things because you have the Spirit of God in you. So this isn't some kind of weird, I don't know, Satan music, oh my God, be scared thing. I'm just curious, just to get a perspective, who somebody's in the business. And by the way, in a genre that probably, I'm guarantee you, there's some Christians that have said, oh, you can't play this type of music. It's too dark and evil and it's Satan's music.
But we've had people picketing signs at our shows, not all the time, but we had experiences back in the early days in the early 2000s. So
how do you feel? But okay, so let's start there. So here you are, a Christ follower. You love this music. You think it's bringing value and hope and intrigue to youth or whomever who resonate with this type of music. So you're like, okay, not everybody wants this type of music, but for those who do, we can help them. We can inspire them. We can enrich their lives. We can give them something that will help them get closer to God. And meanwhile, you got this picketer saying you're satanic. So as a human and Christian to Christian, how does that make you feel? What do you just ignore like they're just ignorant? Or is there a personal insult to it or a pride that has to be reined in because you feel like you're being falsely accused and you get angry at them? And I don't blame you, but how do you perceive Christians that would treat you as though you're false prophets or whatever they would call you, I guess?
Well, the sad thing is you see this type of thing still today, not just with music, but everything, and you just have to realize that people, Christ believers or not, they're still people and we're not perfect and they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have their own opinions and they're not going to always be right. you know. So I just personally I never worried about it. I'd be more worried about if you were that person and I was talking to you, do you believe in Christ? And you said yes. I'd be like, well, okay, good luck. You're good then. And I mean, I wouldn't really worry about anything else you think. Now, if someone comes at me and they're not a believer at all, I might have a conversation about what they think and try to connect with that person. But if someone's already a believer and they're just thinking some crazy stuff, hey, they're still probably going to go to heaven. I'll just let them be. You're typically not going to talk people out of crazy. Yeah. You're not going to do it. You're not going to, it's about the same as me doing a social media post and thinking I'm going to change someone's political mind or faith mind by writing a post. It's not going to happen. Right. You don't do it that way. You have a real conversation, a real relationship with people. They see how you live your life, and you can tell them what all the wonderful things God's done in your life. And that might plant a seed and help the change in their life. You're not going to have an argument with somebody and change their mind. So I don't bother typically. I don't waste my time because I know it's not going to help. Better just to pray for that person. Ask them if they believe in Christ. They believe in Christ. Say a prayer for them and move on.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. And you're right. You know, I was going to ask if you feel an obligation to try to explain, wait a minute, you're judging my heart, you're judging my calling and whatever. But you're right. Once you kind of just dug in as to the way you see things, you're more than likely not going to influence people. So, you know, you don't want to throw pearls before swine. And there comes a point where it's like, I'm doing what God has called me to do. And if it's not in line with his calling, I would pray that the Spirit of God would tell me personally. Yes. I don't need you with your picket sign to tell me my spiritual walk. I think God will be happily tell me that. And let's talk about that, Michael. Have you ever done a song or did something that down the road you said, you know what, I don't think this is what I thought, or I don't know that I'm comfortable with it. Maybe this isn't. Has that ever happened where you reevaluated something that you created and said, this isn't exactly as redemptive as I thought initially. I have to rethink this. Did that ever happen to you?
Not with Pillar at all. We've always had our vision and our purpose, and it was clear from the day one, and we've always stuck to that. So we haven't had that experience with Pillar. Before I joined Pillar, though, so I moved from Southern California to the middle of nowhere, Kansas, with my family. You know, and I was 19, 20 at the time, and I couldn't find any Christian musicians. I was in Christian bands before that in California, moved out there, didn't know anybody, met the only musicians in this very small town, so I played with them. They were non-believers. And then, you know, I would put the band or two together. And when I met the Pillar guys, I had my own band because the only guys I knew, I didn't know any other Christian musicians. So we were playing some places and playing some music that I we weren't doing anything terrible. It just wasn't faith-based stuff. So I always felt a little weird about it. And then once I met the Pillar guys, they're like, hey, we need a bass player. They were just starting out. It's something I prayed about. And I remember driving from college to my apartment and having to pull over because I felt God just kind of hit me in the heart and just say, you need to join this band. I knew instantly on the spot, that's what I needed to do. Now, this other band, you got to understand, I put together. So if I leave that band was no more. You know, and one of my best friends was in the band that I'd played with since I moved to Kansas. I booked the shows. I did everything. So I knew when I left that band would be gone and they'd be really, really upset. And they were, but I knew in my heart that I needed to be over here with Pillar. And I mean, it was just transparent. Like I just knew.
Is there any music? And I'm not going to stay here any longer. I was just curious because we've battled this spiritual fight between Christians and secular music for so long that I figured we might as well talk about it because at least you give a Christian perspective on it, and because you're in a band that isn't a typical praise and worship type style or Chris Tomlin or whatever, where everybody's happy.
We played the clubs. We played with Korn and we played with Slipknot, and we played clubs all over the U.S. Not all exclusively, but as churches, and we played out in mainstream venues. Yeah,
and has secular audiences gravitated to your music, or were fans of your music as well?
Yeah,
you crossed over?
Yeah. We've had non-believers really like our music. Say, hey, I don't really believe in Jesus, but dude, I love you guys. And that's still that's a good place to be. Yeah. Because if they're listening to our music and following us and just God could maybe use us to impact them. And we've heard those stories. We've heard those stories.
Well, and again, how would you have been a missionary if you weren't in that deep, dark, sinful place to reveal yourself to them? So, you have your own calling, your mission. Is there any music that you can think of that you would feel like should be avoided, that you think it does have a darker element to it that is legit and should be avoided? I'm not trying to make you name names.
You know what? I don't, not offhand, because, I have my group of bands that I like to listen to in my playlist. I'm not like listening to everything out in the world. I am a musician, but I have my I'll like something and just put it on repeat for months, so I kind of have my short playlist right now, what I'm listening to, and I'm not out searching for too much for crazy stuff. My friends will suggest music and I'll listen to it, but I haven't really personally sought out or come across something that was just so dark. I'm like, oh, I can't. That's out there though. I know it's out there.
Would that be like death metal? Is that what that was?
No, I wouldn't even say that. For me, the stuff that bothers me is a lot of the pop music right now that you would hear. And I don't even know their names, because I don't listen to it, but I'll come across a song that I got twin girls that are 15, so they know the pop songs. And sometimes I'll hear a song like, oh, you can't listen to that.
Yeah.
It's just straight up, it's on pop radio. Kids are listening to it, and it's as straight up as vulgar and as sexual as you could possibly be. Like, so over the line, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
So that stuff to me bothers me more because that is blatant. People typically will think of evil with metal music. That's the typical old school thought.
Yeah.
But it's not what's harming the children this day. It's the pop stars.
I get you.
And the stuff that's on radio and it's the TV programs. You can't watch a TV program that doesn't, just normal family stuff that has elements that you would have never seen when I was a kid. You wouldn't have seen it. Now it's in every single show. And I'm not going to say what those things are, but things are different now, and things are more accepted now. And that stuff that's just sneaking into our daily life to me is more dangerous than, the Black Norwegian metal band.
I think that's a great, actually, insight because, Satan is the best Satan there is. He's been doing it a long time, and he's a deceiver. He comes as an angel of light. So you're right. If I'm coming in with blah, 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 you're just assuming that's the bad guy. But I hear Taylor Swift or, I don't even know, on Ariana Grande, or I don't know them either, but I know the names. Well, they're sweet. They got to be okay. Oh, well, of course I can send my daughter to them. Well, what a perfect place to hide the deviousness. What a perfect counterfeit to goodness, because you're creating an illusion of virtue and goodness, and meanwhile you're being fed a whole different worldview than those of us who believe in Christ. And you have to have discernment. You have to have the Spirit of God in you to be able to hear those things immediately. And as a father, you have to do it for your kids until they get mature enough to see it for themselves. So good for you. You guys stopped being a band for what, 12 years? So is that a pretty typical story about bands? They go for a while, they break up, they turn into something else, and then they come back. I know, obviously it's happened many times, but what caused you guys to move on? Just kind of said we're tired or whatever, and then
I think every band has their own story of why that happens. Bands are like families. Us four guys were on the road with our crew for sometimes 200 dates a year. So we were together more than we were with our actual families. And just like, we're just people and a bunch of dudes out hanging out. And sometimes what are guys not great at? Communicating their feelings and emotions. Guys don't like to do that, and you got four of us out rocking and rolling, so over time you just get these feelings built up and you don't know how to communicate them, and you're young and you're stupid. So we kind of just drifted apart. We never really officially broke up. Pillar just kind of stopped. We some of us went our separate ways and it just kind of stopped. So we never had an official breakup. We just took a rest. And during that rest, we grew up. We learned how to communicate. We became better friends than we ever were before. And for us to resume, a lot of it was just timing, timing with our jobs and our families and just other things that we had built outside of the band. And it took 12 years for those elements to come together where we're like, hey guys, let's play some shows next year. And that was the conversations we had 2023. And then we came back after about a 12-year break, played 3 shows last year in 2024, had a rehearsal, played a date in Tulsa and a couple dates in Ohio. It went amazing. And we kept it going this year, and played a handful of dates in Germany and New York and Dallas and just kind of all over. And it's been really humbling and just a blessing to see all our fans again that come from all over the world to these shows and just hear their stories. The thing that's been just mind-blowing for us is hearing the stories of how our music did impact lives. Back then, it was our job. It's what we did. Like, we had purpose, but it's still, we had to sell merch and do accounting and, pay these guys and write songs and play and perform. It was a machine. It was what supported our families. And it was easy to miss a lot of things. Now it's just part-time, something we do for fun, and to go do these shows and hear from these fans that go back 20 years and hear how much our music changed their lives. Some people saved their lives. Some people just changed their lives, and it meant so much to them. And to hear that stories from them in tears and passion, like, this is real stuff. It's just been really humbling for us. And it gives us a renewed purpose of what we're doing now, to just really respect it and use what we have built to just the best we can to make an impact for Christ.
Are you planning on getting a little bit more back into touring, adding a lot more dates, or do you kind of stick in where you're at right now, where it's kind of spot dates?
Yeah, just some spot dates. We got too many kids, too much family stuff going on, and other careers for us to just shift all that. But we'll play a handful of spot dates each year. We got one booked next year and looking to do a couple more. We want to do some new music. I don't think it's going to be a full album at first, probably a couple songs, but that's on our schedule to get a couple songs recorded and hopefully out next year. But the big thing we have coming up that's been over a year in the works is a full-length documentary. It's called Pillar Beyond the Frontline. During our reunion shows last year, the rehearsals and then those 3 shows, my son, who's actually a very good award-winning film director, came to me with the idea. He goes, Dad, you guys are coming together after this over a decade break. We should film this and put out the story. And he's such a great director that I just let him run with it. I was like, okay, this is your deal. We're not going to tell you what to do. This is our schedule. Whatever you want, you just do it. So he took the lead on it and just put the whole thing together. And we had the premiere screening this in October at the Dallas House of Blues. So it was the first time we watched it as a band. We had tons of fans there. We played a show, but before the show, though, we screened this documentary. It's about an hour long, and it's just really powerful. He just told an awesome story of why we do what we do, how we came together, kind of the changes, the split, and us coming back together. He just told that story in a very unique and powerful way. And it's more than just a rockumentary, because you hear from fans and you hear the impact and the emotion that our music played on lives, and it teared us up a little bit sometimes, but it was also cool to see that old footage. There's some old footage he had in there in the early days. I was like, where'd you get that? Where'd you find that footage? Because I haven't seen it ever, or I haven't seen it in 20 years, and there it is on the big screen. So we're excited about that. That's going to come out in December. We had the screening. No one's seen it. It hasn't released yet. We're going to release it on our website. Physical copies, probably autographed, with some merch bundles for the holidays in December. And then we might have more screenings next year, and then put it out on streaming next year as well.
Okay, great. Well, that will be exciting. Listen, we're getting close to wrapping it up. I got a couple more things, but I'm going to try something, if you don't mind, different I've ever done before. I'm going to let my son come in and ask you a couple questions, just because I'm curious. I want to hear musician to musicians. I'm curious about what he might say. That bring the chair over, Wyatt. Just move it over. And see, he's was a fan, and it's not going to be a long one, but I wanted to try a little different vibe from somebody who's actually played music and would understand things differently than you. This is my son Wyatt.
What's up, Wyatt? How you doing, man?
He is he's a drummer and a fan of Pillar. So just a couple minutes, but I just wanted to try something fresh. So Wyatt, what would you ask Pillar? First off, you said you were a fan.
Yeah.
So tell me what you like about Pillar.
Well, To me, I group them into the same category as like POD or
Yeah.
Disciple.
Right.
Where it's just that,
All friends of ours.
yeah.
Okay. And what do you like about that music as a musician, as a drummer? What is about that music that intrigues you?
I've always just been a fan of metal, hard rock. I just feel like that those genres are more involved
Okay.
than let's say like pop, which is very, in my opinion, kind of artificial these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. You know, when we write songs, we do it the old school way. We get in a room and we jam. You know, and we try breakdowns and we're just jamming and having fun. Our songs are put together that way, not in a studio through sounds and effects. And then what I like about rock, which I'm sure the reason you like it, just the power behind it. You know, we're not just up there standing playing songs. You know, we're putting energy into it. We're putting moves into it. We're putting power behind our music. And that's why we like it. It's fun to play, you know, with having that edge and that power behind it.
So just ask him a couple questions. If you were to,
I was actually pacing behind the scenes thinking of questions for like.
well, if you don't have any, we'll leave.
Well, I have them. It's just, you know,
Jump
I
in.
worked for this. Okay, I put
Crying out loud.
So
See how
I
kids are.
think so you mentioned during the interview songs like Frontline and Fireproof, yeah,
Mhm.
and then that one, well, are like sort of your biggest for the fans, like they love those ones.
Mhm.
When you wrote those songs, did you think to yourself, this is clearly the one that everyone's gonna gravitate towards, or was there other songs that you thought would be like more popular?
No, we knew. It's probably not always the case, but like when we wrote Fireproof, we actually wrote it on 9/11. The 9/11. Before it happened, we were in Wisconsin on tour with a band called Skillet on an off day at a church, writing Fireproof, and there was TVs on in this thing that were muted. We were playing, and we're like, "What's happening?" And 9/11 happened while we were writing that song. As we were writing that song, though, we knew that song was going to be a hit. We're like, if this song's not a hit, there's nothing else we could do. That was our attitude. And that was a song that did break us. You know, it ended up going number one, I think tied with POD for the longest running Christian rock single ever, like 11 weeks or 12 weeks, something like that, just straight number one. That song took us from here to the next level. The other song that we knew was called Bring Me Down off our Where Do We Go From Here record. We had wrote the music first, like I was telling your dad, Brad, how we typically write music first and then Rob writes to it. Well, musically, we knew that song was slamming, Bring Me Down. We knew it was there. Rob didn't have anything for it. And we had to play a show. So the rest of our band flew to Georgia or somewhere to go play the show. Rob stayed an extra day to record the vocals that we didn't hear. We didn't even know what they were. We had nothing wrote. He shows up the next day in Georgia, wherever we were playing, with a CD. He just goes, I got it. So we're hearing it for the first time. We go to the back of the bus. He puts the CD in, and we're hearing it for the first time with vocals. You know, we're hearing it, you can't bring me down. We're just like, dude, this is it. This is our hit. And it was. We just knew. So yeah, with us, we kind of knew what songs were just going to hit. And, you know, we got lucky, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you mentioned that those songs were like you just knew it would be a hit, and it was. Were there any songs that you recorded that you thought this would be a hit and it just was just average, or like it's not really that much?
You know, not really, man. A lot of times the band actually doesn't have say on what songs go to radio. It's the record label, typically. But typically they agreed with us. Hey, Fireproof, Bring Me Down. They put out some singles after those initial hits, though, that I was kind of indifferent. Like, we liked all our songs. So like, oh, you want to put Hypnotized out there? That's cool. We like that song. And a lot of our singles did go number one. You know, we had a lot of number ones back in the day because back then there was Christian rock radio. There were a handful of stations all over the U.S. and charts, you know, and it was actually a real thing. Nowadays, it doesn't really exist anymore. There's not really Christian rock anymore. Yeah. It's all streaming and, you know, and podcasts and stuff online. But back then there was charts, and we could get the weekly chart and see, oh, we're number one or we're number two behind POD. I mean, it was kind of a fun time to do music back then because of that. It's just so different now. But now for us, not really, man. It's like most of our songs that went out to radio did well for us.
It's interesting, yeah.
How many more do you got? Any more?
That was about it.
That was it?
Well, just if you start, I might think of something else, but
Well, I mean,
it's like I needed more time to prepare these questions.
it's all right. And I'm not trying to, use your time up, brother. I just thought
Those were good questions. I like those questions.
so I guess if I were to ask you guys as musicians, you are the bass and he's the drummer. So, who do you think gets most lost when things go sideways? The drummer gets off or the bass player? And which one is more important? In other words, I've always heard that the drummer is the metronome. If he's got, no matter what everybody else does, he's got to lock her down so everybody knows how to get home. But it seems to me the bass could also reel people in if they were getting off tempo. So
No, it's the drummer for sure. And it's absolutely the drummer. If your drummer gets off, you're in big trouble, or things will go sideways. Things go sideways. We just played some shows in October and started to go sideways. It's Lester, our drummer, that brings it back in, and brings everything together. Thankfully, Lester's one of the best drummers in the world. He really is. I don't know if you've listened to his work like lately or in the last 15 years. Lester is phenomenal in doing, like, now that he's out of Pillar, he's playing for Kelly Clarkson. So if you go tune on the Kelly Clarkson show, he's a drummer back there. He did some drumming for The Voice. He does session work for big artists all the time. He really is one of the best drummers in the world. He's that good that when we play with him, it just feels so safe. We don't have to worry about it because he's always on. And if something does go sideways, he's going to bring it back in immediately.
yeah,
We don't even have to worry about it. So absolutely, it's the drummer that keeps the core of the song together. We're playing to him.
what is the most difficult thing to do as a bass player? What is of everything that happens when you're doing bass? What do you say is the most challenging part of that skill set, that specific instrument?
I don't know if there's really anything challenging for me personally, because I don't think I'm a great bass player. I play with great musicians and I could fake it really good on stage with live performance. But for me personally, as a bass player, like I said, I have a handful of songs where the bass is kind of the lead. It starts the song off. It's a pretty complex bass line, that takes really a lot of skill. So for me, I have to make sure my in-ears are working right and that I can hear that click track, because it may be where I can barely hear the drums, but I'm going by the click because the bass is the lead part. So for me, I get nervous a little bit on some of those parts, because if I fall apart there, it's like there's no hiding it. I'm a spotlight. There's a spotlight on me, and I'm starting the song off because it's the main part.
All right.
So normally I don't ever have a problem, but I always get a little nervous on those kind of leadish bass parts.
And what would you tell any new drummer or bass player that's trying to get into it, start their own band? What would be a tip you would give them to make sure they most focus on when it comes to the basics of being somebody that a band would want to have you in their mix?
Practice. It's always going to be practicing. Have your own gear. It doesn't have to be the best gear, but you need to have your own gear and know how to use it. But really, more than anything, is show up, be dependable, be on time, be easy to work with. You can be the best musician in the world, but if you got an attitude or come in late, you're not gonna stick around. A professional band would much rather get somebody that's really, really good, but really cool to be around, and he's dependable and professional, over this master musician that's just a pain in the butt.
I got you.
So just be dependable, be on time, be consistent, work hard, be friendly, and then practice. You got to practice. If you want to be professional at anything in life, you have to put your time in and work in.
And what was your fit? Go ahead,
Well,
unless you're going to
I was going to say, so you said be on time. Well, my drum instructor, who I still talk to a lot, he actually had a saying for me that I've always remembered. When you're in a band and it's practice time or show time, if you're on time, you're late. Is that true?
It'd be true for me. That's my personality. I'm always early. I get anxious. If I'm even going to be on time, get anxious. I like to be early for everything, flights, no matter what I am. Our guitar player, his brain's not wired that way, and it just, some people aren't wired that way, so it's up to people like me to come up with tricks, like give him the wrong time so he shows up on time, whatever it takes. So I like to be early. I think it's important, and I try to teach my kids that, be on time, be early, be ready.
We've actually experimented with telling like mom.
Yeah, it
time.
doesn't work. People that try to set the clock different so they tricks them. They always know that they've fooled
It's
themselves.
like a sixth sense they have.
What is your? I'm going to end on this, son, so that he can get ready.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite Pillar song and why?
Man, I would say one of my favorite. I don't have a favorite.
Yeah.
One of my favorites would be called. It's called Underneath It All. It was never really a radio single. It just hits really hard live, and when we play it live, you feel a lot of energy. That's always been one of my favorites. And then the bass ones I'm telling you about, Awake and Simply, mean a lot to me personally. Not just because the bass is the lead, but just those bass parts really felt divinely. Like they just were really influenced, just came to me, from God. So when I play them, I feel blessed to be a part of that, that he used me to come up with that bass line. So Awake and Simply are always going to be special to me.
And why don't you tell them, Michael, what was your favorite Pillar song of all time?
Oh, honestly, so my introduction to Piddle was For the Love of the Game.
Okay. Yeah.
My fifth grade math teacher played it when we were doing activities. I don't know why, but that's how I discovered.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that song, For the Love of the Game, I mean, that's, I think, the second song we played in our sets this last year.
Yeah.
Fireproof, and then For Love of the Game was our second song we play live. So, that album. And there's some fun bass work on that album too. I mean, there's a song we've been playing that's this in the same category for me called Turn It Up, and it's just this really strong bass-driven song. Where I got to kind of step out of the shadows off that album.
Yeah. Other than that, honestly, Hypnotized from
Okay.
Where Do We Go From Here is honestly probably my favorite off the album. Frontlines is a close second though.
And Hypnotize is Where Do We Go From Here,
Yeah.
which is the name of that album, and the art and the whole theme of that whole record was actually based off the Hypnotize song.
Yeah, I really like that one.
Well, say thanks, and you can get out of here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks for taking some time with him. I've never done that, but I just thought since he likes music so much and he did like he's a fan of your guys, I thought maybe he might have something to talk about. That'd be fun for him since he enjoys what you guys are. Well, listen.
No, that was cool, man. That was cool.
We got to wrap her up, and I wanted to, respect your time, but thanks for coming on. But I guess two things. One, how will people know, where you're touring? I'm guessing you have a website, and then I'm guessing that will also let people know where to get the documentary.
Yes, pillarmusic.com is home base. That's where you're going to hear all the news. And then at the same time, you can go to our Instagram and our Facebook, which are both Pillar Music as well. So Pillar Music, everything. We do not have a TikTok. We're a little too old for that. I have a personal one, but the band doesn't have one. But Facebook, Instagram, website, all Pillar Music. And as we get concrete dates and information, that stuff will go up right away.
And for anyone who is watching this on YouTube or Spotify listening or Apple Tunes or clips from Instagram or wherever, Facebook, all the social media, all the new ways of marketing, everything that has changed the way we communicate with each other. People listen to me and hear me that aren't just Christians. And you made it clear that you have fans that aren't necessarily believers, but they love your music. So obviously, we're not Christians because we've tried to join some kind of, cult. We didn't join it because we're trying to be part of a community. We think it's true. We believe that Jesus is unique. He is a game changer because there's never been a human like him. And what he's done is unique and sets him apart from all the other gods because he's historically verifiable and was predicted in the Torah. So it's one of a kind. And so I want you to be able to just finish, Michael, with maybe your thoughts, your heart towards anybody that's stumbled upon this, and it's never by accident, who aren't believers but do love your music, so they have a lot of respect for you. What would you want to tell them about your Savior, and how they might want to give this a deep thought about who Jesus is and why they might want to participate in bringing them into their life? How would you respond to those guys?
You know, for me, and I've had people ask me this. I've had friends and sometimes strangers ask me, you know, like, are you a believer? Do you believe in God? Why? And in a very friendly way, because they're generally interested in knowing. And for me, it's because of the things God's done in my life. You know, yes, I'm a believer. I'm not a perfect man. I've made mistakes. I've, you know, like all of us, but there's been very specific times where God's moved in my life, where I know that there is a God and I know that he's working for me, you know, and there's times where I've been low, the lowest of the low, like a lot of us have at some point, and where things feel hopeless, you know, and in my mind, it was hopeless. But, you know, I know I've felt God pull me up and use me to do what I consider great things, because I do a lot more than just music. You know, I'm a really big into fitness as well. I write for magazines. I do acting. I do some modeling. I do a lot of things nowadays outside of Pillar. And, you know, God has lifted me up from low places and still using me to have an impact. But even before all that, man, there's just been very specific times God's saved my life and just, I don't want to say talk to me, because I didn't hear a visible, audible voice, but I felt it so much in my heart that I knew it was God. And it's just hard for me to, you know, not believe, man. I just know, you know, because of the direct influence. Like just when I joined Pillar, that was an influence. I mean, I felt it so hard and big in my heart that I needed to quit the band that I started and upset my best friends and go play with these strangers, because God placed it on my heart. But there's times when I was young, I got hit by a car, catastrophic hit on my birthday, riding my bike, got hit by a car, went through the windshield. They slammed the brakes. I went back through the windshield, was taken to the hospital, was in a coma, should have died. I was told I should have died. And when I woke up from that coma, now I don't remember this. My mom told me this. She said the first thing that I said coming out of that coma was, Jesus saved me. You know, and I've felt ever since that moment and hearing that, because I remember it happening. I remember the brace I had to wear, the whole body brace to keep my body together after that. I remember the injuries, but I don't remember details because I was little. But I've always felt, because of that, I knew that God had a purpose for me. I was here for a reason. He saved me for a reason. So in that knowledge, it's not a guessing. It was a fact for me. So I always go big. I knew I was going to do music. So when I joined Pillar, I knew this band was good. It wasn't like, hey, guys, let's go do some cool stuff. I knew we had a future. I don't even know if the other guys knew as much as I did. So I overworked and pushed and because I knew, you know, there's no doubt for me. And there's been just a lot of times in my life where there's things that I've felt called to do that worked out because God told me to go do those things. So I've just seen him work in my life. And it's not just a feeling. I get the feelings, but I see the physical results of the movement that he has me do in my life and the impact it has on other people. You know, so that's why I believe, and that's the story that I tell other people, you know. So then they're like, well, what do I do? And I just will say, hey, let's pray, and just pray about it, you know. Pray for God to reveal himself to you, you know, because you can't make other people believe.
Right.
You know, and it's well, I'm not sure what the word is. It's ridiculous for us to think that we're going to make somebody a Christian. We don't do that. God does that. So the best thing that we can do is just pray for somebody, pray with them or pray for them, that, hey, God, move in their life, reveal yourself to them. Because then it's really, at the end of the day, up to him. You know, and if he calls you to do that, then we have to step up and do it. Amen.
Well, I appreciate your just transparency, honesty, your integrity, standing for the kingdom, doing your music, your gift. That's, you know, we're responsible for following the calling. He's responsible for the results. So I appreciate, you know, you guys doing that. Are you ever going to be in Nashville?
I don't know. Hopefully. We got two of our guys live in Nashville. Lester and Noah, our drummer and guitar player, live there. So we'll probably be doing some recording there. I know people want us to play there, so hopefully we do. But, you know, where we play is kind of not how it works. You know, people are like, come play Brazil, come play here. It's like, dude, someone's got to call us. We have a booking agent, and a promoter's got to call and put in the offer, and it has to make sense. And so there's a lot too. But we would love to get to Nashville again someday.
Well, anyways, if you're ever there, you know, give me a call. Me and my son will come out and watch it. I'd love for him to watch you guys live. And again, just thanks for your integrity, standing up for the kingdom, doing what it needs to be done. Artists is a unique way to tell God's story. It's not the best way or the most important way. It's a way that God
Yep.
uses us to do what we do. And folks, I lost my mainstream career when I came out and said I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And it cost me, but it also gained me my ministry, my purpose, and what he gave me this gift for. I found was not to be a famous comic. Comedy is my gift, but it's a flavor. It's a package that he gave me to deliver his story. And that's all it is. And so I do that, and I do the best I can, but I love bringing on other folks just as much. So please, thanks so much for Michael coming on. Remember, if they ever say you're politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment, because that's right, folks. This ain't about trying to say Democrat, Republican. This isn't about being political. As a Christ follower, I have to redeem the culture. And if something crazy is going on, I got to bring it up. And let me tell you something, friends. Marxism is anti-God. So I'm going to talk about it because I'm a believer, and I want to bring you with me to eternity where God is dwelling and loves you and wants you to know him. So please enjoy the music of Pillar. Go follow Michael. Go see where they're at. Go watch their documentary and subscribe, and watch them and their music and help them grow and get their influence into the marketplace. And remember, I'm just doing what I do, putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.